Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Maddie. Today's video is kind of exciting. I'm going to be doing my top 10 horror books as of right now because I'm always reading more horror and I'm always reading more favorites. In fact, one of these I read this year. At least one of these I read this year. In fact, two of these I read this year. So my list would be different in 2019. I saw Rachel from the Shades of Orange do this video and she kind of suggested that I do this video and I was pretty excited about it. And originally I didn't think I'd read enough horror to make this list, and then I had a really hard time narrowing down the list. So as it turns out, I have read enough horror to make this list. So these are in no particular order. I'm not ranking them or anything like that. That would be incredibly difficult. I couldn't do it. But we are going to talk about 10. I'm going to give you a little synopsis, tell you why I love them. But yeah, let's get into it. So the first book I have to talk about, not the first number one, not my favorite of all time, just the first one I'm talking to you about, is The Ruins by Scott Smith. I think I read this book in like 2018, 2017, and I freaking love it. So you're following this group of, I think, college students or, around that age who go to Mexico on vacation. And they end up at these ruins and they get kind of trapped there for one reason or another. It's basically like, it's where this archaeological dig had happened before, but when they get there, they're kind of trapped and surrounded in a way. And then as they're there longer, weird stuff starts to happening. So it's kind of an isolated horror story, which I do really enjoy. I do kind of like people who are cut off from everyone else, and this has body horror, and I really do enjoy that in books as well. So I highly recommend this one. I think there's a movie. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't heard great things, but yeah, I really like this book. I don't see enough people talk about this book, maybe because it's a little bit older, but I love it. Next on the list, and the only Stephen King on this list, I promise. I didn't want to, you know what I mean? So there will be a video in the future, perhaps, where I rank the Stephen King books I've read. Little tease for you there. But the Stephen King book that is my favorite Stephen King book, and is in my top 10, is The Shining. And I read this book at the beginning of this year, February, March, literally like right before we went into lockdown. I read this book. And if you don't know the story of this, it's about this family, a dad, Jack Torrance, Wendy, his wife, and their son, Danny, who go to stay at the Overlook Hotel in the off season, which is the winter time. And he's basically the hotel caretaker, and he's just supposed to keep it in order, run certain heating systems and stuff like that so that it is okay for the summer season. And Danny has something called the Shining, which you learn about, and he basically thinks that it's going to be really bad. And as it turns out, it is really bad, and a lot of fucked up shit happens in this book. It's a very psychological book. It's a slow descent into madness for Jack, and it's also horrifying for Wendy to see her husband going through this and the things that she sees and how Danny is acting. So there's a lot of it. It's a chunky book. If you've seen the movie, the Kubrick one, I highly recommend reading the book because it is different and I think it's better. And I just think that the character of Jack in the book is so much better than in the movie, because in the movie, Jack Nicholson is at a 10 from the beginning, and I think Jack Torrance doesn't get there until much further into the book. The next book, which I don't have a physical copy of, is Kill Creek by Scott Thomas. I've talked about this book before. This book is about these, I think, 4 horror writers who are going to this supposedly haunted house on Halloween, and it's like an event and they're like live streaming it or whatever. And kind of what happens to them after they go to this house. The whole story does not take place on Halloween. But they, they're affected by it afterwards. It's basically kind of about what this house can do to these people. And I am a big fan of haunted house or hotel in the case of The Shining books. So yeah, I really do love this story. I think there is a chunk in the middle that I think could have been cut out so that it flowed a little bit better. But the last like 40% of this book had me like gripping the pages. I needed to know what was going to happen to these people. It was crazy. So next, I'm going to talk about actually a novella, and that is The House at the Bottom of the Lake by Josh Malerman. This is a sort of unpopular opinion, or not in horror booktube land, but in regular booktube land, it's kind of an unpopular opinion because basically you're following this couple. I think they're on like a date or their first date, and they go canoeing, and they're in this lake, and then they go kind of to this little lagoon that's off to the side, and when they look down, there is a house at the bottom of the lake. And they just become obsessed with this house. Like, how did it get there? What does it mean? They go diving down there. They go inside the house. And it's just really surreal and weird. And that's why I love it. Because it kind of, you're along for the ride with them and you're trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And I really love, actually, the ending of this was really good for me, which is not a popular opinion either. But I don't know. I just liked where it went, and I would love for this to be like a little mini series or a TV show, episode of Creep Show, something. I need it. I want to see it. Yeah, love it. Next, I'm going to talk about Nosferatu by Joe Hill. This was also on Rachel's list. I don't think any of the rest of mine were on her list. I think this is the only one we have in common, maybe? I can't remember. I know this was on her list because I know she really loves this book. So this book, you're following this girl, Vic, who, when she rides her bike, these bridges appear and she goes across them and she's in some other world. And she kind of, when she's younger, she escapes from this man named Charlie Mank, who drives around in this Wraith, it's a car, and kidnaps kids and takes them to Christmas Land. And Christmas Land sounds wonderful, but it's really not. This book is creepy, and it is perfect for December. I highly recommend reading this in December. And the audiobook is really good. Kate Mulgrew narrates it. That's how I originally read this book. I think she's amazing, and it's creepy. She does the voices, especially of the children, so well. It's creepy. Side note, I have one female author on this list, and I would really like to read more female horror. I have some on my TBR, but I would really love your recommendations. So please tell me down below your favorite female horror authors and maybe your favorite book by them. I would really appreciate that. Next book I'm talking about is The Troop by Nick Cutter. This book is about this scout troop. I guess it's sort of like Boy Scouts. I don't know. It's kind of like Boy Scouts, and they take this trip into the woods, and while they're there, this man comes across them, and he's really sick, it seems like, and he's hungry, and his hunger can't be satisfied. He's just hungry, so hungry, so hungry. And yeah, this book has a lot of body horror in it. It's creepy, it's gross, like, ugh. I also listened to the audiobook of this, which I do not recommend. Well, I do recommend the audiobook, but be careful where you're listening to it and what you're doing, because it could really gross you out. I freaking loved it. I thought it was gross. I want to read more from Nick Cutter. Yeah, it just, ugh. The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. This is the other one that I read this year, because it came out this year. And I had a hard time choosing between this and My Best Friend's Exorcism, but I ended up choosing this, just because I felt really connected to the characters in a strange way. You're following this woman, Patricia, who is a housewife in Georgia during the 90s, and she and a bunch of other housewives in the area are in this book club, and it kind of sucks. Like, they really don't like reading the books and whatever. So they form their own offshoot book club where they read true crime. And one night when she's on her way back from book club, Patricia is attacked by her neighbor, this old woman, and she's like not acting like herself, and it's really strange. And then later she meets that old woman's nephew, who is very charming, and she really likes him. But then she begins to think, is this guy a vampire? And it kind of goes from there. I really love this book. I freaking loved having housewives as the main characters of the book. I loved their reactions to true crime and then reading about true crime, because that's totally how I am. And I just, oh God, I just loved this book. I really would love more books with middle-aged women, especially as the main characters, because we don't often get that. Or older even women, like, we don't often get that. And I would really, really love that. Yeah, I really like the friendship between the women. I really like how it all comes together in the end. I think it's fabulous. Next, and the only book by a female author that I have on this list, is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Again, it was a toss-up between this one and We Have Always Lived in the Castle, because I freaking love We Have Always Lived in the Castle, but I ended up going with The Haunting of Hill House. This book is about this, I think he's like a paranormal investigator who invites these people. It ends up being a group of 5, including him, to Hill House, and they're trying to figure out if Hill House is actually haunted. And yeah, so they're staying overnight in it for multiple days, and weird stuff starts happening. They start seeing things, hearing things, and I just really, really like this. It's very gothic. It's very slow. It's not in your face. Well, I mean, it kind of is. I don't know. It terrified me, but it's not like, you know, splatter horror or anything like that. It's quiet. It's slow, but it's creepy, and I really like the characters. I just connected to them really deeply. And I just fell in love with this book immediately right after I read it. I haven't seen the Netflix series because I heard it wasn't very much like the book, and I'm also really bad at watching TV. But the book is really well worth checking out, especially if you've seen the Netflix series, because it's very different, but still very, very good. Next, I want to talk about A Cosmology of Monsters by Sean Hamill. I haven't heard a ton of people talk about this book, and it is a very strange book, but I loved it. So basically, the story is about this family who they do a haunted house every year, and they are haunted or followed by these creatures that you don't really know a lot about. You don't really know what's going on with it. I could see why some people wouldn't like this, and I will mention that there is grooming and sexual assault in this. I don't think any of the sexual thing happens while the character is a child, but there's definitely grooming. Like, that totally happens. But I think it serves a purpose. I think the author is trying to make a point with it. I don't think it's just in there for the sake of being in there, but I really like the Lovecraftian elements of it. I thought it was strange. It's weird. I like that not everything is explained. I like the development of the characters over time. I like the fact that these creatures have different effects on each member of the family, and what they go through with the creatures is very different depending on which character you're following. Yeah, it's a really strange book, but I really, really loved it. And finally, the last book I'm going to talk about is Slate House by David Mitchell. This is a very strange book. I think that's a theme. I just like the weird shit. This book is about this house that sort of appears at will, and it's this, you know, just like this door shows up in this alleyway, and people who go in don't come back out, and people who go in all experience different things in Slate House. And I don't really want to tell you much more than that, because it's a total experience. Like, you just need to experience it for yourself. You'll go into it, you probably will think you don't know what the hell is going on. You don't know what the hell is going on, but it's a journey. It's well worth it. And I wanted more when I was done, because you get these different snippets of people who have encountered Slate House, but I wanted to see like 100 million more versions of that. Like, honestly, give me Slate House 2, where I just see more people going to Slate House, please. Thank you. Yeah, so that is the November 2020 version of my top 10 favorite horror books. And yeah, I will probably do this once a year. I'm not sure. I don't have a plan, but I never have a plan. I don't have a plan exactly how often I'm going to do this. I think it will depend on how many horror books I read that I really like. But yeah. Please let me know in the comments down below what your favorite horror books of all time, however many you want to say. I don't really care. You know, it's your choice. Also, tell me if you've read any of these books and if you agree or disagree with my opinion on them. I would love to know that, because I think horror is such a personal genre. Like, I think really people have personal tastes, especially with horror. just because of the very nature of it. And, you know, it's supposed to be like commentary on humanity, and like what you've experienced in your life probably dictates the type of horror that you enjoy. That's my theory. TM. Anyway, God. Anyway, please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Again, please tell me your favorite horror books in the comments down below. I really need to know. And please subscribe to my channel if you like this video, if you like horror. I freaking love horror. Please talk to me about horror all darn day. Okay, bye. I will see you next time.